Hey everyone, welcome back to Looking Outside. So this is episode number 2 in a series of mini podcasts that I'm doing at the Rulebreaker Future Congress in Leipzig, Germany, an event that brings together over 2 days some of the most innovative startups and entrepreneurs around the world, but predominantly in Germany, except for my special guest here who is from the US. So joining me for this quick chat is Lyron Bentovim.
Pleasure to be here. You
Yes,
did.
good. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I had the honor of sharing the stage with you and Roger Spitz. You shared some super interesting stuff that I think is very innovative, very much in the rule breaker context. So can you share a little bit about that and who you are with us?
Sure. I'm a serial entrepreneur. 10 years ago, I realized that we're starting a new technology cycle where immersive technologies, virtual reality and augmented reality, together with AI and blockchain, are going to move us from a digital world. We're doing it right now, and we're going to show this digitally, to an immersive world. And one day we'll do this podcast in an immersive setting.
Yes.
And decided that this is where the future of my career is. And basically started with a dream of how I'm going to build a company and where I'm going to take this industry, hopefully. And over the last 9.5 years, made that dream a reality.
Amazing. And a serial entrepreneur. So 4 companies.
4 real companies with many other kind of failed pregnancies, as you call them.
How many ideas would you say that you had for a company that you didn't do anything with?
I can probably list like 10 right now that I would do. And it's funny because a bunch of them actually come up in people's discussions in the conference of people just throwing different thoughts. And yes, I had a business plan around that once and never took it further. But yes, I've got a lot of ideas, but I say ideas are great, but unless you execute on them and there's actually a need in the marketplace and you can actually make that change, they're just a nice novelty.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously right now with the idea that you have brought into a business with virtual reality, augmented reality, metaverse, when did that idea start before you actually started the business?
Basically 6 months before, and then took another 6 months to actually get together with my co-founders and make a company and raise the first round of financing for it. So to start bringing people on. So it was like a kind of 9-month period between I'm going to try and do this to this happening and having people in the office that actually get paid.
And how long before that did you notice that we were starting to move into a more virtual living?
I've been following virtual reality. It had like fits and starts in the 90s, and it's kind of been trying, but it never could actually become real. The technology was not there, the market was not there, but I loved it. I loved some of the concepts from watching Star Trek kind of as a teenager and kind of beyond. So I always had a passion for it, but it was never there. And I think I'm a realist enough to not try and do something that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm early, but I usually kind of look for at least some part of market.
Yeah, of course. And I love that you mentioned Star Trek. I'm still waiting to find a Trekkie to do a dedicated episode where we can nerd out. So if you're
Ooh,
game for that, we
I'm
can do that.
I'm totally game for that.
We can maybe this can be the virtual reality version of this episode on the holodeck.
We can do well. I can probably get the holodeck design. We've got a space station in kind of one of our products where we can do it in a space station. But if you want to do a holodeck, I can probably get some of my artist geeks to actually build one.
I love that. That is a dream of mine. So do you think that that is where we're headed into the future with holodecks?
Yes, but the holodeck, so if we really want to geek out here, the holodeck had the ability to influence what you feel. So watching, kind of basically seeing, kind of and participating, that's basically VR.
Yeah.
But in the holodeck, you also had a feeling. So if someone shot you, you would actually get shot. They had like safety mechanisms and all sort of other things around where the bad people would take them off and all cool things. But you could actually feel an impact. We're still far away from that technology. I think eventually we will have to communicate that directly to the brain. Haptics are good, but not enough and too complicated to really go with. But I think we're going to get there.
Yeah. So haptics is, I think, a really great example of how you can make virtual experiences feel like tangibly feel different. I imagine that you would have obviously seen or even gone to the Sphere in Las Vegas.
I have not been in Vegas since the Sphere opened up. I actually talked to the kind of MSG group that actually pushed that kind of before. I heard about the sphere probably 3 years, 4 years before the public even heard that they're building it. And initially they were talking about this kind of thing in Vegas. And I was like, I don't think this thing exists. And there's like, yeah, no, we're going to build it. They're trying to figure out some kind of cool interactive games in there and how to bring the technology to make something different than anything else. So now they're doing cool things, but they're still within the norm. You're watching an Eagles concert in Vegas, but it's cool setting, but it's not fully taking the dream that they had when they started it.
That's a really good description as well, I think, of the iterations of virtual reality or augmented reality, because, like once upon a time, you were okay with a tiny TV, then you get the sound system and you create a theater in your house, and it kind of inches more slowly towards a more immersive experience. So maybe some people who might be thinking, oh no, like I don't want a fully virtual experience, they're missing that part that you do slowly
You do
towards it.
slowly, and so our version of slowly is most of our VR can be consumed on your computer.
Right.
So if you want to actually go into our VR setting, you can download a file to your computer and kind of come in, and it's 3D. You can walk around with your keyboard and you can do all that stuff. It doesn't give you the real experience. And once you go to the real experience, it's kind of hard to come back. So most people that have not really tried the VR and do the PC, they actually like it. They see the value in it because it's 3D, so it's better. But by mistake, and it's funny, you mentioned the TV, kind of right now we're used to digital TV, 4K, kind of and beyond. Once I was in a hotel and by mistake, I pressed like multiple buttons on the control and it went to a analog channel on the nice big kind of flat screen TV that they have in most hotels. But they, for some reason, I don't know if they still have them in the US, they would have those analog channels. I ended up with like an analog ESPN. And I was watching kind of like a sports game. And after a minute, I was like, I can't watch this. And then it's like, when I grew up, not only did we not have digital, it was black and white. And we sat there and watched the whole game for 2 hours and we were feeling pretty good about it and in a small screen TV. So it's all about use. Right now, I don't think I'll be able to watch like a 2-hour game on a small screen TV in black and white or in analog. It's just because I'm used to digital. Even a lot of the feedback on VR kind of when you go inside is not because of the limitations of the processing of graphics in the headset. It's not as sharp as what you see on a 4K TV. It's getting way better than it was when we started. But the feedback always people point us, why is it so kind of
Like The Sims.
yeah, what I tell them is that our people are actually dumbing down the content. So most of the times people are trying to do things that are the best. And our artists are actually trying to make it compatible with the technology, because if you can make it the nicest and people are lifelike avatars and all that, it won't work. The processing power does not, it will get there, but right now it does not. So the technology is still evolving and you have to stay within the confines of what you can do.
Yeah.
That's one area where it's hard to break rules.
And I like that you mentioned that in the presentation that you did yesterday, where you showed, like many people would be familiar with video games and how much they've progressed, and they're just amazing now. And they do like the face capture, and everything looks super realistic. The new GTA, I think, is in the news quite a lot for that now. Whereas virtual reality, you're still getting the lower K version of that, the analog version. And so it's evolving and it's advancing. And I think one of the things you say is inevitably we will get to a point where it's better and we can have maybe conversations with people in that virtual world that feel more real. So is that the goal, to supplement or even replace real life conversations and connections with people in
Not
virtual
replace real life, replace digital. So I'll explain.
okay,
So
yeah.
that's how I see it. Right now, so we are basically we had the post-humanism and all that stuff. We're post-digital. Doesn't mean that digital go away, but digital is now the base. And we're consuming everything we're doing digitally through 2D screens. And using our phone, using our computers, using our tablets, using kind of big screen TVs, super big screens and events, it's all flat. We as humans like to hang out with our family, with our friends, with our colleagues, physically when we can. But there's so many things we're doing where we're not doing them with them. And there's so many opportunities that we have that we wish we could, but we couldn't. So I want to go to Paris. Okay, so if I want to go to Paris right now, I need to dedicate time to do a lot of things that I really don't like, even though everybody says I like flying, but I can do without it. I just do it a lot. If you and I want to go to Paris together, and you're in Australia and I'm in New York, so we both need to fly to Paris. We both need to coordinate the time to be in Paris. Now, even if we're just going for a day, which is insane from New York and Australia, we still need to coordinate a full day because we need to fly at the same time and do all that stuff. We're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money not doing the fun thing of hanging out in Paris. We're going to be flying and then taking a train from the airport to the city, and then we need to spend a night in a hotel and kind of pay for that. And it's like all we want is just like to walk around Paris for 2 hours, right? That's what we want to get done. We want to sit in a coffee shop. So in the future, we will be able to do that. We will have the experience. There will be a Paris world that someone will build where we can meet and walk the streets of Paris. It would look like Paris. It could be Paris in the 17th century. Could be a future version of Paris, could be Paris as it is right now. Do that, spend the 2 hours doing that together, and then go back to our lives without us spending time or money traveling and getting the benefit of doing it together. You want to go try on some clothes with your friends. You have to coordinate, you need to go to the mall together, kind of all those steps kind of need to happen. You go to a virtual store, your friend will stop for 10 minutes. You just want them to see your outfit. You're going to hang out with them later in person. Middle of the day, you want to get a new outfit. You could tell your friend, can you join me for 5 minutes? Like in the real world, they can. Just getting to the mall will take them an hour. So those are the things that add value. In addition, instead of a Zoom call, you do a virtual meeting. So think of all the things you do digitally, shopping, communication, a variety of things, and try and imagine doing them in an immersive virtual setting.
So a question connected to that, because at the moment anyway, the effort in making an experience happen adds value to the experience. So me making the effort to come to Paris, and I would fly to Paris any day of the week, even if it's for 24 hours, by the way.
Keep that in mind.
But getting there, and then you make the most out of the experience, and it feels like you've spent the time and the money and the effort. It makes the experience more special. So do you think that's a risk that we start to
No, because there's nothing preventing us from meeting in Paris. Kind of the fact that there'll be a virtual Paris, we still can decide that we want to actually see the real thing.
Okay.
Maybe after we've seen the virtual one or try a city we don't know because we haven't been in, and we can virtual, it's like, oh, that would be really nice. We really enjoyed whatever, kind of Budapest. And let's go meet there. And now we can go through that, and maybe that there's definitely the anticipation of doing something definitely builds it up. So it's not replacing, it's adding another element. We're saying you're more likely to find an hour to spend time doing something with someone than a today. Kind of sometimes you do a special thing and you go on a kind of, it's not like people are never going to have vacations again. They're just going to sit at home with the headsets and just meet their friends there. No. But instead of just having a whatever WhatsApp call with friends because they're in Chicago and you're in Australia now, you say, you know what, let's go to the Grand Canyon and walk there for an hour and just chat about life while we're seeing this interesting kind of view, and then we go back to our lives.
I mean, as opposed to just staring at a tiny screen of their face for
exactly.
an hour.
I do a lot of meetings in VR, and you connect the people with the avatar, so you feel like you're with that person. Even if the avatar is not super lifelike and still cartoonish and stuff, I see the avatars of my colleagues that I spend a lot of time with in VR, and I know who they are. And I feel like I'm spending time with them.
But what I like about what you're saying too is that it can replace the poorly executed digital experiences we have now, but it can also create new experiences. So it's almost like we need to redo an everyday journey map because we can insert new types of experiences.
And you look at things where we're spending a lot of time. So the office. So historically, we all went to the office 5 days a week. That was the norm pre-pandemic. Now, some companies have gone remote. Some companies are hybrid. Some companies are bringing back people in. Now, the people that are bringing back people in, they've got all sort of things they're saying about why they're doing it. And sometimes they have hidden reasons to do that and trying to avoid certain kind of behaviors that people have when they're not part of it. And I see the future as a hybrid, but not, you can work from home because there's a lot of waste in coming to the office. Commuting is annoying in most big cities. And it also requires you to live where the office is or where there's jobs that fit your skill set versus live where you want to live. So that's the downside of being in the office. The upside is it's like really fun hanging out with people. You build culture. Everybody's committed. As a company, you might know that everybody's actually working their hours and not slacking off. And so can you find a new hybrid? It's not there yet. Kind of the software is there. We and many other companies can build a virtual office for you, but you don't want to spend more than an hour and a half top in the headset straight. And if you want to work 8-10 hours, then that doesn't work. But it will. It will become something that will be very comfortable. And you can build virtual office without the cost of real estate. You'll spend one time, and kind of with AI, probably won't cost much to build whatever office you want. The laws of physics don't need to apply. You can fly in your office if so you deem. But people will have their personal spaces where they will work, and they can have privacy if they need to have private calls or just work in quiet, and they can kind of mark that, or they can be out there in the public domain having water cooler discussions with their colleagues and making friendships and talking about what happened the weekend or what did you do last night and all the things that we're missing. You try and do it in the first couple of minutes of a Zoom call, but it doesn't always work the same as just like actually having 10 minutes off and kind of coming to someone's office and sitting down and just chatting about whatever.
And particularly for those of us who work in global organizations where you're trying to coordinate things with people in multiple countries and you're trying to do something that's a little bit more impactful, like a workshop.
I use that. I worked in multiple global organizations. And when I started talking about this feature, that's what I was thinking, because my management team was all over the world, from Singapore all the way to California. And trying to get everybody on a call is hard enough. And I saw when we had those like sales meetings and stuff like that, where everybody was in the same place, it was kind of really fun. And you see everybody sitting down doing one-on-ones and really getting to know each other because they never get to actually spend time together. And so my view in a global organization is that you deem that between, let's say, 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Eastern, everybody's in the office. I don't care if you're in Japan or in California, you adjust your time based on the locality or their preferences or what works for their family situation or whatever it is. You put your time in and everybody's in the office. And in those 2 hours, everybody's there, so you can do fun group things. And it doesn't matter if the Japanese guy is, it's an evening and he's in his pajamas, and kind of the guy in San Francisco just woke up and is still having his coffee. They can still be in the same space for at least a while. And I think that's the future of global organizations, which are very powerful in one way because you're getting all these different global perspectives into one organization, but are really hard to manage and to coalesce together.
Yeah, and it's definitely a different way of working, which I think, is one rule that the corporate world needs to break. But in line with the theme of the conference, Rulebreaker, what is a rule that you would break in relation to the industry that you're in?
Ooh, there's so many rules, but there some of those are rules of physics. So the first half of the technology cycle is a hardware cycle. Hardware is a complicated game, expensive game. So all the people creating the hardware are pretty large companies. The ones that are successful or putting enough money into it. And some of them are doing it because they want to make sure that they've got the foot at the door and they actually own the door. And they don't really understand kind of their job in trying to promote the industry. So they're making it very, very hard for the end users to really get into the technology because they don't really understand some motions that they do sway the whole industry. They change a kind of the software, and suddenly everybody kind of doesn't know how to get in, and a lot of different small things. So the rule I would break is that kind of you would have innovative small companies do the hardware. It's not happening, and it's not I can break there. I've broke enough rules in my life, but that's not one I'm willing to try and break, and it's not breakable because it's the laws of nature. You need the big guys to kind of invest the big money, and they need to have the justification, but that's one I wish would break.
Yeah, and like the more that we can make the opportunity, attractive and really paint the vision of the future as you have done, the more those big companies will be interested in doing it. So well done for everything that you do. Excited to see what happens, what other startups you end up, what other companies you end up starting. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that and coming on the show.
My pleasure.